The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Wednesday, June the 3rd, 2026. We're live here at CHD TV. In a minute, we're going to be bringing on our Chief Scientific Officer, Brian Hooker. Then we're going to go to Mothers to Be with Isabella Yon and Leah Lacey, who's been in this game a long time. We love Leah. And then after that, we're going to go to Scott McCollough and Miriam Eckenfield for our EMR update of the week. So, without further ado, let's get on with this first segment, and it's our science segment. CHD Science.
I love the intro. Good morning, Polly.
Good morning, Brian. It's good to see you. Right, we're going to put right some wrongs, which we need to be doing. It's really important that we do this because there's so much misinformation out there. So first up, we have... so this is a big back to school campaign that we've got going on, and it's going to kick off everywhere. Indie kids need vaccines to go to school. Here's how to make sure your records are up to date before school starts. Well, this is a huge problem, is it not, Brian? I mean, these poor parents thinking that they have to vaccinate their kids. In some states, they do to go to school.
Well, this is a huge misrepresentation on behalf of the state of Indiana Department of Public Health. You do not need vaccines in the state of Indiana to go to school. I believe, and hopefully somebody will fact check me on this, I believe they have both the personal belief exemption as well as the religious exemption for vaccination. So yeah, your records need to be up to date, but your records can include and hopefully will include an exemption to vaccinations. There is no mandatory vaccination for school attendance in Indiana. So in many states, many school districts are pulling this same lie, and there's no way around it. It is an absolute lie. There are very, very few states in the United States, California, where I live being one of them, where the only exemption is a medical exemption. And so, when you see this, please recognize what it is, recognize that you are being lied to, and recognize that getting an exemption to vaccinations, except for Florida, where exemptions aren't even required because vaccines aren't mandated for school attendance.
Yeah, and Brian, have we not seen the most horrific injury and death from what they call catch-up vaccines that they make you have when you go to school? So please, parents.
And, the catch-up vaccines can harm at any age. It might be that you're being troubled to have your child updated for 7th grade vaccines, and you say, oh, well, they're a little older, their bodies are bigger, they can handle it. No, absolutely not. Maybe the window has closed in terms of susceptibility to autism, but other neurological disorders, other functional disorders, other autoimmune disorders can be caused by vaccination, and especially when they try to cram so many vaccines within a few or one practitioner visit. It does not make sense. It's not good medicine. It's not good science.
And so to the people listening, if you're seeing misinformation about back to school campaigns in your area, can you please send them to CHD TV, and we'll have Brian put it right, because it's so important that we warn these poor parents about the dangers. All right, let's go on to our next article. Oh, it's a World Health Organization. Measles. Measles is highly contagious and can be dangerous. Know the symptoms, and remember, measles can be prevented by vaccination. Well, we have a little video now, so let's play that.
Measles is not just a childhood rash. It's a serious airborne virus, one of the most contagious in the world, spreading easily through coughs and sneezes. And while anyone can get it, it most often affects children. Here's what to watch for: a high fever, a cough, runny nose, and red, watery eyes. You may also notice small white spots inside the cheeks. A few days later, a rash appears starting on the face and moving down the body. Measles is dangerous. It can lead to blindness, pneumonia, or brain swelling. But here's the good news. Measles is preventable through vaccination. If a child shows any of these signs, contact your healthcare provider right away. Early care makes all of the difference.
Well, she forgot to mention about the measles vaccine called the MMR killing people.
Exactly. There's so many things that are wrong. So few cases of measles lead to anything serious. There's about a 5% chance when you get the measles that you can get some type of bacterial pneumonia that is easily treatable by antibiotics. And, if you've got a practitioner that's on the ball that is looking at the measles, then they're clearing up your lungs with things like budesonide and albuterol treatments or natural treatments that open up airways. And we know that the measles vaccine, the MMR vaccine, it's killed many, many more people than the measles has killed. And so we need to point that out. We also know that in some states, they're giving the MMR vaccine, including the state of Virginia, as young as 6 months of age. And we know that the earlier the measles vaccine is given, the more likely it is to cause neurodevelopmental disorders. All the things that she attributes to measles can happen from the MMR vaccine. It's one of the worst vaccines, a triple live virus vaccine. That does not happen in nature. So we're giving something very, very unnatural to these children. Polly, firsthand because Billy regressed. Billy seized right after receiving his MMR vaccine. And that was the only vaccine that he received during that well child visit.
Yes, it is. And just so everybody knows, he's 30 years old today and his head is still swollen. It's still a large size. So this woman talks about you get brain swelling from catching measles. I would love Billy to have had measles and not the vaccine, because he will, you all know the story. I don't need to list what his life is like now, but I cannot emphasize enough how dangerous. Why is the World Health Organization putting out this nonsense, these lies? And why can't we stop them lying?
Well, because they are in bed with the pharmaceutical industry. The World Health Organization is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation makes money from vaccinations. And so, it's not about children's health. There's nothing in the World Health Organization that is designed to protect children, especially at the individual level. You listen to propaganda like this, and the public needs to be able to see through this and know what is the real reason that we're being told these lies right now.
Right, quite right. All right, let's go on to our next article. And it is the executive order that may change vaccine debate forever. Now, this is Robert Malone, Dr. Robert Malone. And you can talk about this in a second. I just want to pull up one thing that really disturbed me. And it's important that we pull up people, even in our own movement, when they say silly things. And this is silly. Vaccines are among the most important public health tools ever developed. Smallpox eradication alone stands as one of humanity's greatest achievements. Polio, measles, diphtheria, tetanus, and other diseases caused enormous suffering before effective vaccines became available. That is 100% misinformation. And that's why we have Brian Hooker here today. Sorry, Malone, but it is.
It is 100% misinformation. All of these diseases were on steep decline before the vaccine was introduced. Smallpox was eliminated because of sanitation, not because of vaccination. And when you look at it, say, if we're really truly saying that smallpox was eradicated by vaccines, then it took 200 years for that to happen, because smallpox was not officially eradicated until the 1980s. And that was even determined by the World Health Organization, an agency that I do not trust whatsoever for any type of information. The deaths that were quote unquote avoided as attributed to vaccinations really by and large were avoided because of good sanitation. Other diseases like polio, it's very, very unclear the etiology of polio. When you look at how it behaves as a virus, how it behaved when it was being transmitted in animals where there should have been no relationship between the poliovirus and symptoms. There's a book called The Moth and the Iron Lung by Forrest Moretti. It's a really, really good read that breaks down the whole polio myth. But, Robert Malone is a friend of Children's Health Defense, but, this is absolutely wrong. He is on the wrong side of science. He is on the wrong side of history when these particular statements are made, and it needs to be corrected.
100%. Thank you for correcting that. Okay, on to our next article. This is insane. So Dr. Jeff Bark sounds the alarm on Vaxelis. This is 6 vaccines in one shot for little tiny babies, and 6 infants died in the trials. This is serious. Okay, it's important that we expose this. So, Brian, tell us about it.
Vaxelis is a vaccine that is given starting at 2 months of age, and it has multiple antigens in it for, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, polio, Hib, and hepatitis B. This is such an unnatural presentation. When Carl Jablanowski and I did the analysis, the original analysis on the Louisiana death registry, on the Louisiana infant death data, this doubled the chances of mortality if it was given at 2 months of life. Doubled. So, among children in their death registry, they were twice as likely to die if they had received the Vaxelis vaccine at 2 months, between 2 and 3 months of age. So to me, it's no surprise that 6 children infants died during the clinical trials. And that this is buried. This type of information is buried. Of course, you look at the verbiage. It says that the causes of death were not related to the vaccine. That's what they always say, Polly. They always are covering up the fact that these vaccines will cause death. They'll promote death, and you always see higher levels of death in the vaccinated group compared to the control, which in this case wasn't even a placebo control. It was a 5-in-1+1 vaccine.
6 babies died, and that's not headline news. It's
No.
brushed aside. First of all, I don't think babies or children should ever be tested on for any vaccines or anything. I think it's barbaric.
Right.
And secondly, Brian, just to say to those parents out there, so when you go in with your 2-month-old baby, they're tiny, you go in, that you'll think it's just that your baby's just getting one vaccine. So it's one needle with all that stuff in it. It's so evil.
It is so unlike the way nature works. It's so unlike the way the immune system was designed to work. We don't queue up 6 different diseases and expose a child to all 6 of those diseases at the same time. It is counterintuitive. But, the public health authorities and the vaccine designers say, oh, well, it's so convenient. It's only one needle stick. The best needle sticks are absolutely no needle sticks, but the concoction that they've put into this particular syringe is causing death. We've shown in the Louisiana data that it causes death, and even the clinical study, it has no business being on the market.
Brian Hooker, thank you so much for being on this morning. I want to say to our viewers, please follow us. We are on Instagram. We're going to get someone to clip what Brian's just been saying about each of those different subjects. It's really important that we warn other parents. So if you're on X, we are on X at CHD TV Live, or the main channel as well, Children's Health Defense on the main channel. We're also on Instagram, CHD TV. We're also now on Facebook.
Yes.
Allowed back onto Facebook. So those clips will go out on those. Whatever platforms you are on, please do share these clips of Brian talking and putting everything right, because they're very, very important. We warn the parents. Thank you for your time this morning, Brian. And thank you for all you do for us.
And thank you so much, Paula. You guys have a great day, and it looks like a great rest of the show as well.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We're now going to go to Isabella Yon with Mothers to Be.
Good morning, CHD TV. My name is Isabella Yon, and welcome to our Mothers to Be segment, where we chat everything from preconception all the way through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And I'm delighted today to introduce my lovely friend Lacey, who is going to be sharing her story of her 3 littles and just different experiences with pregnancy and birth and motherhood with all 3 kids. So welcome, Leah. Thanks so much for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's so good to see you again.
Yeah, lovely to see you too. So why don't you just kick us off by introducing yourself and just sharing a little bit about your family and your kiddos?
Absolutely. So my name's Leah. My husband Joel and I have 3 children. We have 2 girls and a boy. And boy, our journey is a little bit crazy and unconventional. We had very vastly different pregnancy and birth experiences between our first child and our second 2. And although the first one wasn't ideal, I don't think I would change anything because everything that we have gone through has made us the people that we are today. And I just believe that everything happens how it's supposed to unfold.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into it. So let's start with your lovely oldest daughter, sweet Lily girl. Let's start with pregnancy. How would you describe your pregnancy with Lily? How was it?
I would say it was totally normal.
Okay.
I mean, I do remember getting headaches, but I had that with all 3 of my pregnancies. I didn't have anything, that caused me to have to not be able to work. I didn't have anything debilitating. I actually didn't even have morning sickness for any of my pregnancies, which I know people who have that probably hate to hear that, but I felt very fortunate. I felt like everything was completely normal, down to the fact that she even was born on her due date. And then the difference between my first pregnancy and birth and the second 2 is that I was very young and very scared to do anything wrong and put all of my trust in authority. So whatever my midwife said, whatever the doctor said, I just went along with because I felt very out of out of depth. I felt like I didn't have any experience, and I was afraid that I would make a wrong decision. So I just trusted them pretty much blindly, and I do regret that to some degree. Although I know that everything happens how it's supposed to. So the night before I had Lily, like I said, she was born on her due date, which was July 2nd, 2011. A girlfriend of mine wanted to come over and do one last, she's a photographer, so she wanted to do one last photo session just in case I went into labor the next day. And I said, well, let's get Chinese food. I heard that spicy food can put you into labor. So we got Chinese food and we did a little photo session. And probably about 45 minutes after we ate dinner, I started to feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I was like, I don't want to be dramatic, but I think the Chinese food put me into labor. And sure enough, I started getting contractions closer and closer together. And Joel actually went to bed. He went to bed really early around that time because of his work schedule. So he didn't even know I was really in labor until I woke him up and said, okay, it's time to go to the hospital. And so we got to the hospital. I was very much deep into labor, not practicing any sort of regulated breathing and very frantic. And the nurses there were like, did you take any classes? Do you know how to do any breathing? And I said, no. And so they taught me how to breathe and regulate myself, which really, really helped a lot. And I opted for an epidural. At the time, I had tested positive for Group B strep, so I did an hour of IV antibiotics. And I was just chilling in the hospital bed. After that, I couldn't really feel anything. So I remember just being like, wow, this is pretty easy. Why doesn't everybody do this? Scrolling on my phone, just, waiting to have a baby. And then, the typical sequence of events unfolded, which was that my labor started to stall. And they said, okay, well, things are not progressing, so we need to give you some Pitocin to speed things up. So they gave me some Pitocin. Fortunately, it did not result in like an emergency C-section or anything like that. But it was just another intervention and another drug introduced that, going forward, I wouldn't have chosen, and I didn't choose for my next births. And then, she was born. It was pretty uneventful. But we noticed that when she was born, immediately when she started crying, that only half of her face was scrunching up and half was flat. It's still so hard to talk about. And so the left half of her face was paralyzed, and we didn't know why. I had ultrasounds during my pregnancy. I did everything conventional. There was never any sign that there could be anything wrong. So because of that, she couldn't latch. And I did take a breastfeeding class while I was pregnant because I was determined to be, just it was really important to me to breastfeed. So because she couldn't latch, I ended up pumping. She went into the NICU. She was jaundiced, and we had to feed her with like a little dropper in the beginning, just with colostrum in the inside of her cheek. And then eventually we would bottle feed her and scrunch her cheeks together to close that suction around the bottle. And, they were just trying to figure out what it was that caused this and what was going on. And we were transferred to Children's Hospital, where we did every test under the sun. And they eventually found that a couple of her cranial nerves weren't fully developed and diagnosed her with something called Moebius syndrome. But there's no known cause. It's not thought to be genetic because it occurs once in a generation. And there are parts of the world where there will be clusters of people with this syndrome, which, indicates that it's likely environmental, but we don't know what specifically causes it. Later on doing research, I think that it could be attributed to, I got the flu vaccine while I was pregnant, which I do regret because, no vaccines are tested for safety in pregnant women. And I also took Tylenol occasionally for headaches because, both of those I was told that they were safe. And so, could that be a factor? Maybe, I don't know. But she was developing after that. She was in the NICU for 3 weeks. We were released, and then we just thought, you know what? She's just gonna need a little bit of extra help. We were going to occupational therapy, feeding therapy, and she was developing, albeit she was a little delayed. She was otherwise, normal. And then we just went to her normal pediatrician visits, and it was after her second round of vaccines, we thought, man, she seems like she's kind of slowing down in her progress. And we asked her pediatrician, and we were told everything was normal. And then it was after her third round of vaccines that she did have a reaction, and she was never the same after that. A couple hours after that appointment, she was vomiting and she had a fever, and she was pretty sick for about 4 days. And then, and the pediatrician said, just give her Tylenol. And after the fourth day, her fever was finally gone, but she was basically, we say she was like a lifeless doll after that. She was just, instead of making eye contact and, tracking things with her eyes and really being present, her eyes were glazed over and she would just stare at the wall. It was very traumatic. Obvious that it was caused from her vaccines, even though her pediatrician said it wasn't. So we pretty much dove into vaccine research after that because nobody could tell us that it wasn't caused by that. It happened, the same day. After that, we said, you know what? We can't even think about having more children because, we had a child with special needs, and we were constantly trying to figure out how to improve her quality of life and heal her. We had a lot of hope that we could recover her. And so we just put all of our energy into that. We learned about vaccine court really early on, and we just thought, you know what? This seems like a huge, huge waste of energy and time and peace. So we didn't even pursue that. We said, let's just focus on trying to heal her and educate ourselves and then educate our friends and family. And so that's what we did for years. And then Lily was on the original Vaxxed bus. We interviewed, that's where we met for the first time, and interviewed with your mom. And we met them, the whole Vax team, on many occasions in different cities. And we had a conversation one night where I was telling Polly that I wanted to have more kids, but I just really really feared that it would be too hard having a child with special needs. And I will never forget this. She said, you have to. If you want to have more kids, you absolutely have to do it. And she referenced your family. And she said, when you have siblings of a child with special needs, they will be the most compassionate, loving human beings. And of course, you would never have more kids too, with the sole purpose of helping with the child who's going to need, assistance as an adult. But she said, you won't even have to worry about that because they'll be so compassionate. You will have support. And if this is what you want, then you should do it. So I told Joel that, and he was like, no, I'm good. And then a couple months later, we had talked about it here and there. One day we were sitting at our community pool. There was nobody else there, just us with Lily and her little stroller. And we had our feet in the deep end. And, I said, remember what Polly said? And he said, yes, okay. And I will tell you, I was pregnant that day. A couple weeks later, positive test, and that was my second pregnancy with Annalise. And this time we said no hospitals. We'll do a birth center. It felt like a compromise between, mainstream hospital, but I didn't feel equipped or comfortable having a home birth. So we were going to do a birth center. And then everything changed the night I went into labor because I didn't realize how quickly I was progressing because I was doing self-hypnosis for the pain, which I can attest works. I did not realize that I was actually in active labor about to have the baby because I was in such a deep state that I was in and out of sleep. And I woke him up and said, oh my gosh, after this contraction, we have to call the midwife. We have to go to the birth center. And it was like over 60 seconds. And he didn't know that I was in labor because he went to bed before. So I wake him up. It's like 2:30 in the morning. And he said, I walked down the hallway with my legs like barreled out, walked down the hallway like this. I don't remember doing that. And he just looked at me like, oh no. Oh, that's not good. And so he's trying to call the midwife and he's hanging up by accident. He's frazzled. And he said, well, I went to lay on the birth ball because I was going to labor a little bit more. And I immediately got up because it was so uncomfortable because I had a baby about to come out. And I just got on the couch and I opened my legs and I was facing the wall and I put my head down and he just was like, oh no. And I said, call 911. So from the time I woke him up to the time there was a baby on the couch, it was about 10 minutes. And that was crazy. So right after she was born on the couch, everything was fine. He was pretty much in shock. So I said, hand me the phone. I can take over from here. And I said, okay, what do we do next? And I jumped into, the adrenaline's pumping. So I jumped into, active mode. And he was telling us to find some string to tie the umbilical cord. And I was like, I feel like the paramedics are going to be here any minute. It's been a few minutes. I think she's fine. Like, we don't need to panic and tie the umbilical cord. It's fine. So a few minutes later, they arrived, and that was our accidental home birth. She was fine. Everything was fine. He cleared her away. She cried, and everything was great. And then 7 months later, I was pregnant again, and that was not planned. And at that time, I felt like, well, I have already done it at home. I don't really need a hospital or a birth center. Like, I'm fully capable of doing this. And a friend of mine did an unassisted home birth, which is very controversial, and I recognize that, but it's not illegal in the state of Florida, at least. And I wanted to do that with a doula who specialized in unassisted home births. So I did all my own prenatal care. I was meticulous about keeping records just in case anything ever, happened. I could document that I was doing, that I was tracking things, I guess, and maybe that's unnecessary, but I just wanted to be extra safe. I had a huge binder of all the possible things that could go wrong during a birth and what to do to fix it, when to call 911. And I also planned on having, a professional there. And unfortunately, her son got sick pretty close to the end of my pregnancy. And so her business partner lived a couple hours away in Orlando. And I thought, well, what are the chances that I have a baby in less than 2 hours? She doesn't have to be local. Well, it turns out that's exactly what happened. I called her and let her know in my when I was, definitely sure I was in labor. I didn't want her to make a trip for no reason. And again, Joel didn't know I was in labor. He was at work and he called me and said, "Hey, I'm not feeling well." He had a bad cold. He's like, "I'm going to come home early." And I said, "Okay." And in the 15 to 20 minutes it took him to get home, I was in labor, like sure that I was in labor. And so she headed our way and she got a flat tire on the highway and was stuck on his shoulder. And once again, Joel and I delivered the baby unassisted. And this time it was on the bed. And yep, that's Elias. That was it. And that was very empowering. Of course, it was a little scary, but you know, I had trust in my body, and ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to happen whether you're ready or not, you know. And that's the thing about it. People say you're so brave, and it's like your body's going to do it anyway, so you really don't even need to be brave. You just need to be there. So so he was born, and then she showed up, the birth photographer showed up, and I remember being full of adrenaline. I mean, we waited, we did you know, we didn't clamp or cut the cord right away. We put the placenta into a stainless steel bowl, and I was sitting on the living room floor, breastfeeding the baby, eating frozen pizza, popping around, asking people if they needed anything to drink or eat. I was just fully energized, and I felt amazing. And that's how I felt after both of my home births, compared to, you know, the hospital birth, which was very traumatic for all the reasons that I told you. And, you know, I definitely don't want to have more children. I feel very comfortable with having 3. But if I ever were to do it again, I wouldn't change a thing. I would do a home birth for sure.
Yeah, what amazing stories. Truly. I would love for you to touch on like prenatal care, because I feel like you have a very unique experience. While you didn't birth in the birth center with your second, you experienced prenatal care with a midwife. So you had the traditional hospital prenatal care with a midwife, and then your own care. Again, I know you're not going to do it again, probably, but if you were, which one would you choose out of the 3, and why?
Okay, well, they were all 3 pretty different. So with the first traditional, I felt like almost every appointment I was pulling my pants down and they were examining me. And with my second, I said, I don't want any internal exams. There's no reason that you need to be doing that. So while I did go to the birth center on a schedule and they would weigh me and take my blood pressure and, you know, do all the normal things, I never did any like internal exams, and I didn't feel it was necessary, and they respected that. They did ask me to get the Tdap vaccine, and I asked them for a copy of the insert, and then I highlighted you know, parts of it that, you know, supported why I didn't feel comfortable getting it, and they were totally fine with that. And then with my third, I just said, you know, each time I got less and less mainstream and rigorous about things that I just felt like weren't necessary. And so I just tested my urine. I did go get an ultrasound. I didn't do any ultrasounds with my second. We just did blood work to find out if it was a boy or girl, because I could not possibly wait. And so with Elias, I did go to one of those places where they just determine if it's a boy or a girl. And I just kept records, you know, of my weight, and I can't remember if I did blood work or not. It's kind of a blur, but you know, I don't want to say that there isn't a time and a place for medical care, especially emergency medical care. And I would never, ever want anyone to feel like I'm saying that one particular way is better than any other way. I respect everybody's decision to do what they feel comfortable with their own body, 100%. I can only say that in my specific experience, know better, do better is my motto with everything in life. And I felt fully confident that I didn't need unnecessary interventions. And it didn't. My kids are great. They're healthy and they're fine.
Yeah, so encouraging. Thank you. And let's chat about your kiddos now. How are they all doing?
Great.
Health-wise, all of the things. How are they doing?
They're wonderful. Adelise is 7. She'll be 8 in January. She is so smart. She is so quick. I swear she's so mature and deep, and she's funny and creative, and she's an amazing artist. Elias is 6. They're 16 months apart. Elias is 6. He is all boy. He is, you know, karate chopping down the hallway. He's very physical. He likes to do physical labor out in the yard. build things. He never stops talking, and he is so sweet and sensitive. And then Lily, she's 14. She's not speaking. She's in a wheelchair for school, but she's in there. We're doing spellers with her, spelling to communicate therapy, and we're still working on trying to heal her body and help her live her best life.
Well, thank you for the update. And we always close our segment with one question, and that is if you have any advice for a new mama, because a lot of our audience here are new mums or expecting mums. If you had any advice for these mamas, what would it be?
I think the most important thing is to remember that no good decisions in life in general are ever made based on fear. I think that that's pretty universal. If you are panicked and making a decision based on fear, you're not thinking clearly. So trust your gut. Don't let anybody bully you or pressure you into doing something that you're not comfortable with. And really take time to listen to your body and trust yourself and decide if you're making a decision because it's what you truly believe is best or if it's fear-based. And I find that if you really do research and take time to look deeper and look beyond the surface and look beyond the mainstream, you'll find your answer. And it's not always the first one that's fear-based. So trust your gut and be not afraid.
Yeah, so good. Thank you so much, Leah. This has been so amazing. And thank you for just sharing your experiences, all three so different. But I just feel like we can learn so much from other mamas and experiences and our stories. So thank you for being bold to come on and share. And I know it will help so many mamas watching this. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. We will see you next week for another Mothers to Be segment. And now we're going to move on to our People Study Story of the Day.
Well, good morning, everyone. Not quite the People Study Story of the Day yet, but welcome to another EMR and Wireless segment. My name is Miriam Eckenfels, and I'm the director of CHD's EMR and Wireless program. And before introducing today's guest, which will be our litigator, Scott McCollough, I'd like to introduce today's topic and an issue that should resonate with every homeowner across the country. And that's property values and the impact that cell towers and wireless infrastructure has on property values. This month, our 704 No More campaign is running a campaign called What's Near Your Home Matters. This campaign focuses on a simple but important reality. What is placed near your home affects the character of your neighborhood, the quality of your life, and often the value of your largest investment. For many families, a home represents years of hard work, savings, financial planning. It's a place where families raise children, build memories, and really invest in their future. So when large wireless facilities, cell towers, small cells, or other wireless infrastructure are built or proposed right next to their home, next to their schools, on their playgrounds, on their neighborhood parks, the neighborhood desirability and the overall quality of life changes. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So studies vary by location and facility type, so it depends on the type of cell tower that is proposed, but numerous real estate professionals, appraisers, and researchers have documented that the proximity of a cell tower can negatively impact your property value. It negatively impacts the buyer's perception, the marketability, and the value and the of the investment itself. So even when buyers are not specifically concerned about the radio frequency radiation, many express concerns about the visual impacts, the industrialization of residential area, the aesthetics, noise from the cell tower equipment. And of course, a lot of people are concerned about the health risks and the uncertainty that accompanies that infrastructure when it's so placed so closely to homes. Some reports and national studies actually suggest that properties near cell towers have a reduced property value of up to 20%. So think about that. Properties close to a cell tower can lose up to 20% of their value. That's huge. And to discuss all of this, I'm happy to welcome our lead litigator for EMR and wireless cases, Scott McCollough. Welcome, Scott.
Morning, CHD. Hi, Miriam.
Hi. So, Scott, one of the central concerns of What's Near Your Home Matters campaign is that homeowners often feel powerless when a cell tower is proposed near their property. And as we know, Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996 limits the ability of local governments and residents to object based on health and environmental effects. But what about this concern that I just outlined of the property value impact and the quality of life concerns that these people have?
Well, we have to separate one, the facts and reality, and two, what the law says about it. Many of you may be shocked to learn that the law does not always reflect reality or practicality. It's just the truth. But what you've said is true. There are many, many studies. They have looked at national effects overall. They have looked at effects in particular areas, both in the United States and in other countries. And they have collectively come up with a range of estimates using various ways of looking at it, between, a zero effect up to 20%, with the great preponderance of them coming in between 5% to 20% negative impact. The number varies largely based on the distance from the tower to the home. Most of them look at the impact of a cell tower that is within, a half a mile, sometimes a mile. But what you see is that the closer it becomes, the more the impact is. And that just makes sense. And again, as you said, it's not all because of the environmental or health effects. It's because, let's face it, these things are ugly. Right. And people don't want to look out on their front porch, maybe if they bought to have a particular view of whatever it may be that they're important or they want to have this upside down toilet brush right in front of their point of their perspective. They're just ugly. Right. And, realtors have always said, location, location, location. Well, this is part of location. So it only makes sense that there is, in fact, some impact on property values. And it is, of course, obviously based on the potential buyer's perception. What does the law say? Well, traditionally, in the local zoning context, impact on adjoining properties to a proposal for any kind of land use permit, not just wireless, but any kind, has always been a significant input factor. The local zoning authority has always been able to say, well, this use that you were proposing to make to your own property will have a significant adverse impact on adjoining properties or other properties nearby. Therefore, we're either going to impose conditions to mitigate that impact, or we're just going to deny the permit overall. They've done that forever for any kinds of land use issues. When it comes to wireless in particular, for a very long time, the courts have said this is the way this has always worked. And yes, of course, a local zoning authority can consider adverse impact on adjoining properties, including a potential reduction in property value. One thing that many people don't understand is it's not just property value. What we are beginning to see out there when we talk to people is that there's also an impact on your own insurance that you pay for your property. That is because especially if it's close to you, you face the potential that the tower will fall on your property, therefore leading to an insurance claim. There's a chance that it may catch fire. There's a potential chance, especially if it is on your property through something like an easement, that you may indeed bear liability if someone else is hurt. So it impacts insurance that you pay as well. In other words, it reduces property values and it raises your own cost of ownership. Now, right. recently, the FCC has proposed to prevent local jurisdictions from taking things like adverse visual impact and reduced property values, to say that local jurisdictions cannot do this. And they are basing it on a provision in the Telecommunications Act that says that local jurisdictions cannot regulate on the basis of environmental effects. The commission logic is, well, people are really scared about the health effects. All this stuff about property values and everything else is just a sham. It's all about health effects. Federal law says you can't do that. Therefore, you cannot consider visual impacts, property value impacts, other things. Now, that's only a proposal. It hadn't passed yet. But yeah, the commission is trying to take away the ability of local zoning authorities to take this into account, like they always have forever for everything.
Right. And obviously, we are staunchly opposed to that and to the rules that the commission has proposed in that regard. But just to summarize sort of like what you said, people currently can object on the local level to proposed cell towers based on the impact of property values. And even though, cell towers are being proposed everywhere, this is one of the reasons that communities very effectively use to oppose proposed permits. And the impact on property value is not only direct based on the impact of health and environmental effects, but because studies show that those properties are less desirable, they stay longer on the market, they become harder to sell. And so therefore, then it decreases the desirability. And frankly, it changes the look and feel of a neighborhood. And we actually use property value impact in a lot of the cases and communities that we represent through the Stop 5G community empowerment service. Do we not, Scott?
Yes, we do. But one thing I do have to say is the courts have increasingly said that while a local jurisdiction can use this as a basis to impose conditions or even deny, it cannot just be basic layperson testimony. And an individual cannot just say, I'm afraid it will reduce my property value. You actually have to have some expert testimony, somebody who is an expert in assessing property values. That could be an appraiser, it could be a realtor, it could be a broker. But you actually do need somebody with credentials to come in and express this opinion and explain why they think that is so in this particular circumstance.
Right. That is one of the things that we recommend in the step-by-step instructions that are outlined on stop5g.org that walks you through how to effectively oppose a cell tower. And we actually have details about how to use property values as an effective way to raise opposition. So, as part of this June campaign where we're trying to highlight the property value and the neighborhood impact of cell towers, we will send people off into their neighborhoods on a scavenger hunt to find cell towers where they live, to note cell towers where they live, to send us pictures or to post about cell towers where they live. And once people start paying attention to the infrastructure that they see, it's everywhere. So as we encourage people to go on this scavenger hunt, we need for folks to know what cell towers actually look like. So, Scott, we're going to go through a couple of images of cell towers on our Where is Waldo campaign idea. And you are going to tell our viewers what type of infrastructure this is, where they might be able to spot it, sort of like what type of antennas there are, and so that they actually know what they're looking for. So why don't we start with the first image?
Yeah, that looks like a traditional cell tower. I can't fully assess the height, but it appears to be a 3-carrier macro. In other words, it's a fully functional tower, obviously right by a right-of-way or highway. There's 3 sets of antennas, which means there's probably 3 carriers on that particular tower. That looks like a traditional cellular network for all three. So, frankly, if I had to guess, I'd say it's AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon.
Right, the usual suspects. So this is you're going to see those all over the place when you drive through, your neighborhood, when you drive through over highways. These macro towers, they are indeed everywhere. How about the next one?
Yeah,
another macro.
Yeah, it appears to be. I mean, I can't assess whether it's over 50 feet, which is the cutoff for what the FCC says is a small wireless facility. But this one actually has 4 carriers on it. And that could be that a single carrier actually has 2 installations there. Or it actually could be a 5G type network that is operated by some other provider, perhaps a regional carrier, or it may not even be cellular. I mean, one thing that people have to understand is these antennas can house different kinds of technology. Those are sectored antennas, which tells me it is probably for cellular type service or mobile service. But it could be for somebody who we may not necessarily consider to be a traditional cellular mobile carrier.
Right. And what's interesting about what you see in these, upside down toilet brushes type looking macro towers is these long rectangular, antennas and receivers. And those can actually be placed on rooftops. They can be placed on churches, on playgrounds, on utility poles. Do we have some images of that before we get to the small cells? I'm just going to give the production a second here to pull up those images.
Yeah, you can put this stuff on basically any structure that is strong enough to support it. They can go on water towers. They can go on any other kind of elevated spot. They can go on the side of a building, either just mounted on the wall or up on the roof, elevated. All of these appear to be flat panel and therefore what we call sectored antennas, which mean each antenna will cover a 120-degree space. This one here that you're showing, the one that we were just showing, may have been actually more of a fixed antenna network doing point to point. That one there. So there are many. A lot of these look the same. You have to be able to kind of look at it and try to figure out whether it is cellular or mobile. But the fact of the matter is, whether it is an AT&T or a T-Mobile or a Verizon or some other specialty application, the effect is the same. They're transmitting. They're operating under the FCC's exposure limits. The impact on property values is the same, whether it is a traditional mobile application or whether it's a fixed service, whatever. The impact is the same.
Right. That does not really matter. I think what we really want our audience to do is look for those rectangular antennas, because they sometimes hide them really well. If you look at your local churches, at your schools, etc., you're going to start notice them everywhere, I promise. So now let's move on. Before you said that everything below 50 feet is considered small. Right. So now let's look at some of those small cells that are also public. Look at that. Imagine if you live in that apartment right there.
Yeah, now that is a small wireless facility, a small cell. If you look at it, you can see there are 4 pieces to that can. That tells me there are 4 carriers inside of it. And by carrier, I don't mean AT&T or T-Mobile. I mean a transmitting set of antennas. It looks like it could be omnidirectional, but that may just be a screen, and there may actually be 3 antennas inside each of these. But this tells me there's 4 sets of antennas in there. It may not be 5G. One of them may actually be Wi-Fi.
Right. That's something that they're doing in New York quite a bit, right? That they want to have the public Wi-Fi available for everyone.
But you will see a lot of cans appearing things, not just flat panel antennas like the one that's behind me, but also something that looks like a tin can.
Right.
And inside it will be 1 or more antennas that may be omnidirectional or may be sector. Again, this is just highly technical stuff. Fact of the matter is the impact is the same. There's
Right.
exposure regulated by the FCC. It's ugly. It impacts your property value.
Right. And those cans, they actually place those on utility poles quite a bit. I don't know if we have an image of that, but that's sort of like when we talk about, the 5G small cell rollout, that's exactly this image where, we see them pop up on utility poles, radiating and transmitting.
Yes. I mean, it can be on the top of a pole. It could be on an arm below the electric distribution lines. In many places, they're actually mounting these antennas on the strand between poles. They're called strand-mounted antennas.
Right.
It's just a tin can sitting on the wire itself. And, I got to tell you, some of those present some real safety issues because when the wind blows, they whip around a whole bunch. And, they're problematic. But nonetheless, if you see a tin can looking thing on the wire that goes between two utility poles, it's probably an antenna.
Wow. Right. So this month, participate in the campaign. Go out there, see if you can spot cell towers in your neighborhood, share with a friend, pay attention to what's around you because what is near your home matters. Thank you very much, Scott, for coming on today and for sharing your expertise. As always, it's a pleasure.
Well, it was fun. And everybody take care. Have a good day.
Thank you. And before I let everyone else go, I want to take a minute to remind our viewers to please make their voices heard and take our action alerts to stop the federal cell tower takeover. Please add your voice, take action, and I'm quickly going to walk you through the action alerts that are currently live. We have one action alert to tell all federal officials, including the President, Congress, and the FCC, to stop any wireless expansion until the FCC has complied with the 2021 court order that requires them to review its outdated RF exposure standards. This action alert is live now, and I'm sure the link is going to be in the show notes. And then we also have new resources on 704 No More, including the campaign assets for the cell tower scavenger hunt. So for additional educational resources and educational flyers, PowerPoint presentations around property values, and all of the different aspects of cell tower impact on neighborhoods, go to 704nomore.org under the resources tab. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We are at Stop 5G Near Me on all major platforms, and we are also at 704 No More on all major platforms. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's segment, and I believe now it's time for the People's Study Story of the Day.
Okay, tell everyone your name, please.
Margie Phillips.
Margie, and this terrible tragedy that happened to your husband. Can I ask you why he thought it was a good idea to have a COVID shot? Did someone coerce him into it?
He worked for a company that had both stateside and international sides to it. The international side is what made him take the vaccine. He was about to leave for Austria around the 4th or 5th of January. His team from Austria called him on December is the week of Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I've blocked out which day exactly. And told him he had to be fully boosted. And he told them that 6 or 8, 9 months before he had had the J&J vax. They said, but you have to be boosted. So he said, okay, I'll go get it, because we had talked among each other that if we got a booster, he got a booster, it would have to be a J&J. But they told him on the phone call that this was the last day that he could take it, because he had to be 3 weeks out from taking the booster before he entered Austria. So they needed proof of that on that day before he could go to his plant in Austria. So he hung up the phone, went to the nearby pharmacy, and all they had was the Pfizer booster. He took it on that day.
All right, so he took the Pfizer booster And then what happened?
It was a few days later. I know that it was after Christmas that he started, my husband's a very big life force. He started getting quieter, just sitting a lot. And he started running a very high fever. We fought it for days. He had had COVID previously before, twice, and we thought this one was really not much different. And he just got to the point where his oxygen levels were dropping. And he requested to be taken to the hospital. I did not want to take him there, but he does have a voice in his own care. So we took him to the ER, and then the hospital protocols took place. But he had a blood clot to the lung and died instantly.
Blood clot to the lung?
Mm-hmm. I don't know quite the medical term for it. My mind's a little rattled right now.
Were you with him?
Unfortunately, with hospital protocols, I was only allowed to be with him 2 hours a day. The evening before he died, we thought he had turned a corner. He sat up and ate a Nutri-Grain bar and drank some water. And I went home that evening thinking we had turned a corner. The next morning I got there, the hospital agreed to let me separate my 2 hours, one in the morning and one in the evening. So I went back that morning. They let me in at 8 a.m. When I walked into his room, it was chaos. They coded him, and he died that morning of a blood clot.
Now, did you report this to Pfizer?
No, I have to admit I haven't. To some point, I have to stay out of that realm for my mental health. But I'm getting better with that as time rolls on. But no, I did not report it to Pfizer.
Did anybody in the hospital or any doctor at any time say that this is likely to be the shot that did this?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The hospital atmosphere in itself was, it felt like a war zone for me, having to go in and fight for his care. The medical personnel, not the nurses, but the doctors were very forceful with pushing certain medications that I refused, because I had been aware and been looking at and listening to Dr. McCollough, different people, that if I went the remdesivir route, it was dangerous. And not only that, 10 days later, it's no use, and David was past that. So I refused it. And the physician ended up firing my husband as his patient because of that. And we were referred to another pulmonologist, which in turn would be a good thing. But he only lived a day under that pulmonologist. So.
And his death certificate, what did it say? Blood clot?
It says COVID.
It said COVID?
Mm-hmm. I went and had all his medical records copied off, including the nurse's notes, because I felt that one day I might have the strength to pursue this more. How, I don't know. The cards are stacked against us in that arena, but it was a blood clot. That's all I'll say.
I can't believe they wrote COVID on it.
That's what's on it. That's what's on it.
Did he have COVID?
When he went into the hospital in the emergency room, when we took him in the emergency room, he did test positive for COVID. The hospital was so packed at that time, they kept us in the ER for 2 days. I was able to stay with him 24/7. I had him up walking. He was talking better, doing better. At the same time, I was refusing. Every 2 hours, they would come in and want to do remdesivir, they try to wear you down. He was doing really well in the ER, and I look back now and I should have taken him home, because when he got up to the floor, everything changed.
Yeah, you should have taken.
I should have taken him home.
Okay, so he had a Johnson & Johnson way back.
Long time, probably in 21, he had the Johnson & Johnson.
And then the Pfizer was the booster. So
that's the only Pfizer he ever had.
It's interesting to the viewers and I, because we've been following these hospital protocol deaths, that they were trying to remdesivir your husband when he was already vaccinated.
Yes.
I find that fascinating.
Yes, and I even had the doctor that fired my husband, the first pulmonologist, told me in the ER, these were his exact words, well, it's a good thing he was vaccinated, it could be a whole lot worse. This was the same doctor that followed me up to the floor and that eventually fired me because I kept refusing remdesivir, and I confronted him about why don't you give him ivermectin then, or HCQ, and he said, I don't agree with those medicines. And I said, well, I don't agree with remdesivir, so let's respect each other's differences. And he fired my husband that day as his patient.
So basically he said, say it again what he said?
He said if he had regarding the vaccine, he said if he told us down in the ER face to face, he said, can you imagine what it would be like if he hadn't had the vaccine? He would have been a whole lot worse.
Oh, he'd probably be alive today.
Yes.
So how has this made you look at the whole medical system, the whole vaccination schedule? How's that made you look at it?
Well, my 2 daughters have children, and they have educated me a lot regarding Big Pharma and the vaccinations, and they've helped me learn a lot. So I had a little bit of knowledge before that, but through all the horror stories I've heard on remdesivir and things, I began to research that more, so I had that little knowledge as I went in. But I was more surprised by the atmosphere in the hospitals. The nurses gave my husband good care. It's not the procedures, it's more the policy. I told everyone I know, if you have a loved one going into the hospital, you've got to be mentally strong and physically strong and emotionally strong. And that is the very times when you're not, when your loved one's laying there struggling. Those are the times when you're not strong in any of those areas, but you have to be, because it's like going to a car lot and they constantly are hounding you. That's the word I use, hounding. I was hounded.
But your husband wasn't. Your husband was treated well.
By the nurses. As far as, I would ask them to give him more water and they would jump right on it. Those kinds of things. The nurses are just following the doctor's orders, I'm sure, but
I know that the viewers have been following along with this bus tour will find that fascinating, because the unvaccinated people that go in are not treated nicely by the nurses at all. Okay. They're not allowed to be given drinks or ice chips or anything.
Really?
So there had to be some bonus. That was the bonus.
I suppose that was a bonus, because the nurses did everything I asked. I would even ask them to make sure they put notes on his chart, and I asked to see them, and they would show me, because he was thirsty and they wouldn't give him water, and so I had to really.
But when you asked them, they would.
But when I asked them, they would do that. The doctors, however, were just different. They were cold. They were stiff. They were one-track mind, and they did not want to. My daughter sent me a theory about, testosterone, and giving him whatever meds it is for testosterone. That seems to help. They didn't want to listen to me about anything at all. Anything at all. It was, if anything, I sort of knew about Big Pharma through my daughters educating me, but I did not know about in-hospital. I have made my mind up that I do not ever want to be admitted to a hospital.
Well, we need to have our own hospitals, is what we need to do. Nice people that we trust.
It's just different. People don't realize, unless they've been there, how different it is.
We're going to put a picture of your husband on the bus.
Okay.
And you're going to sign his name on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you want to tell us?
Just be educated and be aware. I think that the medical community is beginning to come around and band. Now we need lawyers, legal people. to come together and ban these coalitions like the medical community has, because they took my husband's power of attorney and he signed off all his medical to me, and they treated it as if it was toilet paper. I had power. They would even approach him in his room and he could barely talk and try to get him to take remdesivir. Just be aware, and we need legal people to form a coalition to give us strength in that area too as well. Just be aware when you go in the hospitals now, and don't take any vaccines.
Right, and do you remember Children's Health Defence have a brilliant legal department, so everyone get behind them.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.